Welcome back to The Daily Edge, where we ask entrepreneurs, executives, athletes, and high performers how they find their edge. Today's guest is the chairman, Steve Nudelberg. We dive deep on the concept of finding edges, a pillar of the Seahawks Super Bowl win, and something all high performers understand how to do. As always, I'm your host, Marc Nudelberg.
Let's find our edge.
Welcome to The Daily Edge. Always great to have the chairman in the studio with us. And today we're going to be discussing the concept of chasing edges. The Seahawks recently won the Super Bowl. Mike Macdonald won it with this core philosophy of chasing edges, which he defines as hunting every small legal advantage that will help you win. For me, it was like a mind-blowing, like so simple, yet okay, incredible. Why isn't everybody doing this all the time? Why isn't everybody talking about this? But what does it mean to you?
So I think people are doing it. They name it differently. They package it differently. You know, I've been blessed to have worked with some great coaches who always had a theme, or they always had something that they could make their concepts easier to digest, I think. So for me, it was like, here's our rallying point. Now, you know, as a marketer, people do that all the time. They come up with campaigns.
Right.
This was his campaign. It was very simple. It was very real. It was very actionable.
Well, so the show's name is The Daily Edge. And when people hear edge, I think they think Herculean effort, or like they think like unbelievably strong and overwhelming, which is not what he's talking about. He's talking about the tiny legal advantage. So like, I want to ask you, right? Like in sports, I get it. Like for me, I go back to, oh yeah, we would look for our edge all the time. Like if I'm watching tape as the kickoff return coach and I'm watching the kicker, and I know the kicker kicks it both to our left and to our right, the very first thing I'm looking for on film is what's the tell on how we know where the ball's going to go. Because if I know where the ball's going to go, I can then scheme something off of that that's going to give us the advantage. So the edge, the tiny little detail, is like the way he positions the ball or where he's positioned before he goes to kick.
Right.
It's like the tiniest little thing. So in sports, I think I can make the reference really easily. In business, what's your edge?
I think... I take it back to the movie Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
And he goes, we're going to fight for that inch.
Right.
It's really inches.
Yep.
You know, and in a world that's commoditized, everything's really the same. What is the edge? What are you finding? Why does someone choose you over somebody else? And I think that's really relevant. It comes down to preparation. And I just don't think people spend enough time preparing for success, preparing for what it takes. You know, I called it was interesting. I used to call it show up and throw up, man.
Right.
Monday morning, I'd walk around any one of the showrooms, or, you know, people were like, you know, it's figuring out when they're going to get coffee or what like you and I,
no preparation.
You and I, Monday morning, we're already fired up by the time we're sitting, having a cup of coffee and a bagel at 8 o'clock, going through, you know, so I think all of this stuff points to, it's funny because you said like people that think it's gargantuan or Herculean, you know, daily has to happen every day, every minute of the day. The day you decide not to do it, don't get out of bed.
Somebody else has the edge.
Football,
as soon as you don't get the edge, somebody else has it.
And that's what always drove me in business, was like, no matter what happened today, I got to do it again tomorrow, or I get to do it again tomorrow.
Well, so like, and I like any buying scenario, particularly salespeople or business owners, I think, oh, well, my edge is we can do it for cheaper, or my edge is we have faster speed times, or my edge is, you know, we
have this color,
we have this, we have this unique operating system, You know what I mean? I think that's what people go to, but that's never the edge with people. right?
So funny because I was yesterday. I was actually watching the old Jocko podcast with Dave Burke on,
right?
And Dave Burke said the individual is always more important than the technology,
right?
The plane, the pilot, and again, that feeds all of this kind of stuff. Now, I worked with head coaches for a long time. You obviously became a coach, and all of this philosophy, the idea, and Nick Saban just said it again. He said, man, people are so focused on outcomes. They're not focused on process and system and behavior. Behavior is directly tied to where the edge is.
Well, so
it's a behavioral edge.
You talk about Nick Saban. I remember watching Nick Saban and Bill Belichick sit down for that interview where it was an unbelievable piece of content. But
is that tarnished now that all this shit's out there?
No, because that was still as good as it was. Like it's still that was still good. No matter what happens after it, that was still good.
Just the way you look at him is.
But I know for sure Nick Saban, if you walked into a meeting and presented a plan to him against the team that said okay, on offense this week, we're going to focus on throwing the ball specifically in this zone or whatever because it's what we do well. And had it been what the other team actually does well at taking away, he would look at you dead square in the face and go, so we're going to do the thing that they're the best at taking away?
It's ridiculous.
What are you, retarded? Not to use the R word, but ridiculous. He would look at you, he would go, are you kidding me? How do we have...
That's not how you win.
We don't have an edge there.
That's not how you win.
That's not where we have our edge. And I think great leaders, great performers they know where their edge is. Tom Brady didn't become the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL trying to run around.
No.
He knew that wasn't his
edge.
He knew my edge would be in preparation. My edge would be in decision making. My edge would be getting the ball where it needed to be faster than anybody else could react to.
I was just going to say his reaction time was his thing. But, understanding it, executing it, all of those things are what make high performers great. And I think it bodes well across sports and business. But it's not that.
Well, the old school sales, right? Okay. And I love going back to this.
Are you doing that because I'm in the chair?
Well, and I know that you're going to be able to just get right to the point. Okay. You walked in, let's just go to the scenario. You end up in somebody's office that you've never met before.
My head was on a swivel, man.
What are you looking for? What are you looking for?
I was looking for what hobbies they had. I was looking for family pictures. I was looking for any clue, anything that I could grab on and go, oh my God, I didn't know that you went there or you did that or you know them or this is important to you. Hey, when we were at Aflac, the guy collected knives.
Right.
I mean, that would have been the thing that, knives, man.
Right.
Tell me more about knives.
And that would have been a competitive advantage for me because as a kid, I collected buck knives.
Right,
all the time in North Carolina, I was buying new buck knives and learning about who made this one and that one.
When you said that to those people, I was like,
right.
I knew that you could go there.
There's an edge. There's an edge that I would have over somebody else, which I think...
And you could be talking about knives the rest of the conversation and be winning... Which historically in life, you had to get into somebody's office to do that. You had to get in front of them or around them in order to figure that out. The Zillow CEO was just quoted as being shockingly surprised at how underprepared these C-level candidates are because they're asking questions that they could have answered on Google in 10 minutes. That's his direct quote. When people reach out to me and go, hey, I'd like to spend some time learning about your business, I go, fuck you, do that on your own time.
So I literally...
Why would I take my time to educate you about my business?
As a follow-up post, I have a screenshot of an email that I got that said, hey, Mark, we noticed that you're trying to position yourself as a leadership coach on LinkedIn. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? I was like, no way.
Seriously? Well, how many times do you get hit up to write a book?
Right. It's unbelievable the lack of preparation. The lack of preparation that goes into approaching somebody, which would be a competitive advantage if you had that information prior. That is the edge for people, is what I know that I can use to my advantage.
So the edge is always behavioral.
Yes.
For me, it's always about behavior. People think, it's funny because as we teach it, they think that just because you do it, you're going to be successful at it. I don't know who's going to respond and how they're going to respond and whether it's going to be a good call. And most of the time it's not. So part of my edge is understanding.
Guess what?
I'm not going to hit home runs every time.
No coach ever knows that the plays are actually going to work.
No.
Right? They're going, hey, we think based on based on what we do well versus what they don't do well in these scenarios, we think this play is going to work really well. But then there's 11 people on the field that have to do exactly what they're supposed to do, and the defense has to do what they were going to do in order for that play to work the way that it was supposed to.
So it's really interesting.
There's no given.
It just brought me back to the phone business. I found a competitive edge in the pricing model from Cellular One that everybody looked at me and said, dude, you're a genius, man. How did you do that? I paid attention. I looked at it.
The details.
But here's the most significant part that I liked about what Seattle's coach said. Legal. He goes, I'm not cheating.
Right.
Right. Why is Bill Belichick not in the Hall of Fame? Because he fucking cheated.
Not legal. Right?
It's not
You're
legal,
filming
man.
the sideline. Really not
you're
legal.
You're deflating the ball, man. You can't be doing that. So he was very deliberate about saying, I am going to look for that. And his podcast with Michael Gervais, I remember years ago when you turned me on to Michael Gervais, still one of my favorite podcasts to date, but it talks about behavior. And they, specifically Pete Carroll and how he found the edge in everybody, because the edge in everybody on his team was different. Right. It was different, man. It's a blanket, hey,
So, I don't care if in business you're talking about dealing with a person or dealing with a strategy or dealing with a product or dealing with a service. Every scenario, the edge is going to be different. Why somebody chooses to work with on the ball is different. Sure, the concept is the same. They all want to get better, but the competitive advantage on why they chose us over somebody else to help them get better is based on who that person was and who we are and what the connectivity was there. It's not always the same.
So you are always saying this, and I was in the Leadership Academy myself this weekend, kind of running through it and looking at it. It's fantastic, but the same rules. You got to learn to control what you can control. And I can't control the way someone else, why they buy or what. I can only control what I think and what I do. And so that is all behavior based, man. It's, so if I can
strictly preparation though. It is 1000% being willing to spend more time preparing and being more detailed and more rigorous in the preparation, because I don't care if we're talking about building a football strategy or you're talking about preparing to walk into an interview at an organization or trying to do new business with somebody. The more time you spend in preparation, knowing yourself, knowing them, knowing the landscape and the environment, knowing the game, you understood the phone game, you understood what the competitors were doing, you understood what you had at hand, you were able to create a competitive advantage there because you knew all of that. Without the preparation and knowing that, it's impossible to have an edge.
It's interesting. So I'm working with somebody, and I won't mention their name, it's fine. But I am working to get them in a frame of mind that they have to control the sales process, their own sales process. They've never done that in their career before. And the 5 a day is controllable. And he was looking at me going, yeah, well, I can't do 5 a day. And I said to him, if I took a gun and I held it over your foot and I said, you got to get 5 relevant calls today or I'm going to blow your toe off, you would get 5 calls and you would do that every day. So you had said something, and I forget exactly how you phrased it, but you either can or you won't, or
either way, you either can't or you won't. So the classic line from Jimbo Fisher was, he used to yell at the kids all the time. As soon as they were wrong, as soon as they did it wrong, you either can't or you won't. Either way, you get replaced.
And so if you want to do well at this, You know, people say, think it's some magic potion and it's a Herculean. Oh, you have this great edge.
Yeah.
You know what? The reality is most of the people I know, the competitive edge, is they just work their ass off.
Right.
They do the work.
Right.
There is no substitute. You talk to all of these successful people, Damon John, Kevin O'Leary, Mark Cuban, when they unpack their stories, Kobe Bryant, man, the 4 a.m. thing is not bullshit, man. He was in the gym doing the work, man. So, nobody talks about how bad he was when he first became a pro, So you look about the edge on all of these teams. It's funny because I'm focused on Pat Riley now. He's been in the news a lot. And his competitive edge was the way he dressed on the sideline. Yeah. And I'm enamored with that. I met him back then. Yeah. And I was enamored with him as a...
Armani suits, baby.
Man, he was gliding, and the guys loved him. Yeah. And he's making a push for... You don't even know who the coach is anymore by the way they dress. That's a competitive edge. Yep. You would not show up at any of the meetings that we go to without a blazer, without doing, that's your edge.
It's correct.
It always was for me when I started speaking. You got 3 seconds, the audience is going to make a decision. They would go, man, that guy knows how to dress.
So, and there's an interesting concept here, I think, because there are things that are innate to me. There are my characteristics that I'm not going to change. I'm high energy, right? Like I'm aggressive in some way, right?
I have no idea where you got that from. Just shocking to me.
So that is an edge for me with a lot of people who also resonate with that.
It might not be an edge, though.
It's actually a disadvantage for people who that does not resonate with, but then I have to be okay knowing
with that.
That's not a place I'm going to play. And I think that's what's really important about when we talk about finding our edge. We say it all the time on this show. When we talk about the daily edge, is that it is this keen concept of understanding what you're good at and what you're not, and what opportunities exist out there that you can match with that self-awareness, that those are the games you should spend your time playing. If you show up in a place where you don't have an edge, you show up like everybody else. And when you show up like everybody else, you get what everybody else gets.
So they made it so that Sam Darnold could have an edge.
Correct.
They put him in a position.
Correct. They said, here's what you've been good at.
And just stay here.
Right.
Don't
Let's
do
build a
else.
system that helps you excel
and so I give
at that.
the GM a lot of credit. So they were working together to put, and I just recommended this book to one of our clients, Good to Great. He had never read it. Jim Collins,
right.
Said, have the right people in the right seat doing the right things. So, when you talk about all of this stuff, talent management, having the right people there, doing the right behavior, knowing what the right behavior is, that is an edge. And you see in a lot of organization, it's people are the edge.
Yeah, almost always the people are the edge. Great conversation.
Always is, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, if you are looking to find your edge, you got to do the research. You got to do the studying, spend the time doing it. And with that, sir, look into that camera and say, let's find our edge.
Let's find our edge.
Study.